Hello, this is a very special day today. We have Ariel Viera with us. Ariel is a filmmaker, a content creator, a wonder content creator now, which is extremely exciting, and an amazing person. Hello, Ariel.
Hey, Mikey, it was awesome to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me over.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Ariel, you have over 500,000 followers on TikTok.
I do, yes. I explore
And,
places all around the world, show people the history.
right, and this is that's pretty amazing because TikTok has not been around for a very long time. It's pretty new as a concept, and you've been able to crack the code. Basically, that's how I'm looking at this. So in this episode, I really want to talk a little bit about how you started, why you started, why do you do what you do, why did you choose travel as your theme, among all of these other themes. uh, um, so I'm very, very excited to have you here, and let's start with a little bit of your beginning. Tell us a little bit about how you started and basically why.
Sure, from the very beginning, as most movies go. I will go to the very beginning, but 6 years ago, I started making live videos on Facebook. It was around the time a lot of other Facebook content creators started popping up. Nos Daily, Drew Binsky. There was a few of the other major ones. I decided to go full live video. And the cool thing about live video was that I was able to tell these very long, epic stories about history without the needing to edit. And they would be very conversational because a lot of people would be commenting live and I'll be responding to those comments. And that got me hooked. So I started doing live videos many times a week for 5 years, and my audience did grow pretty big on Facebook. I ended up getting maybe about 30,000 on my own in the first
Oh,
like
wow.
4 years, and then it
What,
blew
what
up
what
even
was the
more.
what was the top
Um,
viewers you had online at the same time?
So live video was very interesting. I was able to reach massive audience, but to translate them into followers was a bit more tricky. But my biggest audience was the Puerto Rican Day Parade, with more than 240,000 people tuning in live, and then more than
Wow,
200,000 more tuning in afterwards. And the cool
crazy.
thing is, it filled in a need because there was no major television broadcast covering the parade that year, and I was the only one inside the parade. Plus, I was Puerto Rican. Plus, I already knew the history about Puerto Rican history and the history about music in Puerto Rico. So I just filled in all the gaps and was able to get a massive audience.
So this really exploded.
It did, yeah.
And so how did you move from live to TikTok, which is basically a different thing? Because in live you didn't do any editing, but then TikTok you pretty much have to be very creative with the amount of information you're getting into a short video.
That's a great question. It was 2020 during the pandemic, and I kept scrolling through TikTok. I found the app fascinating, but at that time, it was only dance and humor that were the biggest things. And I don't know, I just kept scrolling, determined that I was going to find a way to go viral on this platform. I just had that in my mind. And then they added the voiceover feature, which really changed everything. So I was able to use some old footage that I filmed on my 360 camera and just put a voiceover about a beautiful view in Manhattan. And that showed me, like, oh wow, I could do like a nice little story in a minute or less, and still do something of value to people, which is telling them something cool. So uh, the way I ended up finding the formula really was, I tell these stories on live video that usually are 10 minutes, 20 minutes long. What if I could tell that 20-minute story in 1 minute?
Right.
And I love the challenge in terms of storytelling, of really like telling you like the full story, but just in 1 minute. And that's where it blew up because people love that super breakneck breakneck pace of telling a story, uh, fast and condensed and very succinct and straight to the point.
Wow, this is cool. So you had so when you did live videos, it was not about travel; it was about history, right?
It's always been in the travel context. I just use history, architecture, and food as my lens for showing travel.
Got it. And what works? How did you know what works? When you transitioned from long live videos to short, consistent, very squeezed videos on TikTok.
Ultimately, it's all storytelling. So a good story is a good story no matter the medium. But of course, you have to tell the story for the medium as well. So on live video, uh, telling a TikTok story is not so interesting because I'm done in 1 minute. It has to
Right.
be conversational. It has to be more casual. It has to be more longer and paint a bigger picture. But on TikTok, the story has to be no fluff, just directly to the point. And if I'm going to tell a joke, the joke has to be very easily understandable for many, many people because I have people tuning in from all around the world. So that's why I really take into account the first and foremost is telling a good story. But the thing is, every story has the same structure. It's always a
Right.
beginning, middle, and end. You just have to tell it in a compelling way. The cool thing I learned about on TikTok was that the stories I told were not chronological. Like, oh, I'm going to tell you about, let's talk about the history of Eiffel Tower. It started in construction in 1899, blah, blah, blah. I won't do it that way. I will say the most outlandish thing about the Eiffel Tower. For example, do you know that this is the building that they almost were going to destroy?
Right.
That already gets people hooked. So I noticed that in TikTok, it was all about that very first hook. And I used to work in media before ever doing content creation. And in media, there's a saying that is called "Don't bury the lead," which means that if you're going to tell a very sensational, saucy story, make sure that you don't leave the saucy part in buried in the middle of the story. Tell it right at the headline. And that's what you have to do in TikTok is just go straight to the point and tell people the most sensational part of the story.
That's interesting. So you moved from the 30,000 followers you had on Facebook, moved to TikTok, which is new to you. How did you get to 500,000 people following you? That 500,000 people is a lot of people. That's like a whole city.
um, yeah, the cool thing about TikTok is that it shows the audience, it distributes for you. So you do zero work in distribution. Unlike in Facebook, where you may have to seek people to share or get your own audience to share or to comment. On YouTube, you have to find perfect SEO and descriptions and titles and things like that and thumbnails. On TikTok, you don't need to do any of the work. So that's the cool thing. TikTok found my audience that likes history, likes architecture, and likes the way I tell stories. So that was very convenient. The second factor is traveling. So Facebook is very local. So when you post, I'm sorry, TikTok is very local. So when you post on TikTok, it shows your videos first and foremost to the people in that area, which is, it could be both a blessing and a curse.
Right.
If you see a lot of New Yorker TikTokers, they kind of plateau after, say, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. There's some great creators that kind of just got stuck there because they're only doing New York content. And basically, everyone who followed their niche has followed already.
Right.
But I've been traveling. So the moment I went to Ireland, Irish people had no idea who I was, but here I was telling cool stories about their own country and their own history, and they were like, "Who the f is this American telling our history?" I'm intrigued. Let me follow.
Right.
And that happened in all the countries I visited.
Interesting. So, 500,000 people, very successful. I'm very proud to have you on Wonder as a creator as well. So tell me a little bit, how do you see, you've been, since you all in, and you have background in the media industry, so you have a pretty significant base on how do you see or had, and your experience in the media and the video space. How do you envision the future of media and the future of travel content and the future of videos?
That's a great question. The future of videos. short videos is a very effective platform that I think could be used way more. So I don't think we barely touched the cusp of the utility of short video. You guys, Wander is doing a great job in finding that utility, especially with travel. Like it makes perfect sense to put a booking link or tour link to a travel video that's relevant, because that's extra additional layer to the video. So, for example, the internet overall was built on layers, and every layer was added on top of each other, and we have the internet. So, video, I think, needs those layers, especially first short form video, and then I think later regular video and live video. So we need to add those hyperlinks and maybe make those hyperlinks two-way as well. So one can, you know, they can communicate both ways. The other thing is affiliates, there's booking links, all these other things, annotations. You could do so many cool things with video. I think that's the future. But the future beyond that is I think people really like authenticity. So authenticity is going to rule as big as high production quality can. So Netflix is very terrified of TikTok. They mentioned that in their investor meeting last year that it was their number one competitor because, for example, Netflix or a major Hollywood studio is spending millions of dollars in a show that's like 30 minutes, 40 minutes long, with super high production quality. When a guy going to Ireland or Italy
Right.
films a 3 minute video with his phone and gets a few million views, um, potentially the money can also match whatever Netflix is making in the future. So I think that's going to be the future. Is authenticity is going to be treasured as much as a high production uh, show would be as well.
Cool, and you touched a very probably the most important topic, which we really like at Wonder, and that's what drived me to start a company, which is monetization. And many smaller creators, or creators who are just starting as creators, are watching this or watching or listening to this podcast, and I guess would be very very interested to hear how do you look at monetization. What do you think will happen in the future? What tips would you give to creators to monetize their creativity? What is your touch on this?
Tips for monetizing, I would say to smaller creators is focus on the biggest value you can give to your audience. I'm going
and
to be
then
more
and then
philosophical
upload
about
it to
this because
Wonder. I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
I'll be a little bit more philosophical about this because I know you'll get a lot of practical tips from other creators because some people are really good at that. But I would say if you're giving top value to your audience, somehow you'll make money. It might be a little bit scary because you might not know how, but somehow you will. And that value isn't going to be as clear cut as you think it will. So a lot of people sometimes think that they fall into the trap that the value is the tips that they're giving, especially in the travel space. They think, oh, it's about these practical tips I'm giving. They're valuable. People will like that. Yeah, maybe, but there's already a lot of books on that. Rick Steves does that. DK Eyewitness does that. Um, or they might think it's in the intellectual quality. That's the trap a lot of history YouTubers might fall into. Oh, it's all about the history I'm telling. It's very well researched. But if you notice, some of the biggest creators are the ones making people laugh, or making them feel like they're friends, or showing them a snippet of their own interesting lives. The value is more simple than that. It has to be more to the heart rather than just the mind. So if you're providing that value that really makes people feel good uh, about their own lives, or optimistic about their life, it will go a very long way. Beyond that, try to monetize the way that your audience wants to pay you, basically. So one way, of course, is posting videos on YouTube to get ads, or on TikTok to maybe be on the creator fund or get sponsors. But beyond that, if your audience is tuning in and really loves your content, um, put a PayPal link or make a Patreon, if especially if you can offer a little bit extra content. Find or make merchandise. If you are someone in fashion, I think it might be even more worth to make your own clothing line. You can think about it so many different ways. Or if you're full history content creator, maybe actually write a book because people are really gonna love that.
Right. And it's easier to purchase a book than like video
It's
content.
easier to
Like
purchase a book, yeah.
you touched that as well. The relationship of the creator with the audience, and a lot of conversations we have internally with creators of the company is whether they know who their customers or who their community really is, and if they want to turn them into customers as any other business, they have to know who's the profile. So do you think you know who's following you and you can segment it actually? And on top of this, do you think a creator at the beginning of the road has to define clearly what kind of audience they want to have?
That's another great question. I think you can approach it very different ways. I don't approach content creation as a business, so I'm not really thinking about the demographics and the segments. I'm approaching content creation more as a entertainment. I say that the best audience is someone that you want to have in your audience. So I focus first and foremost on making content for me. So what I would find interesting, I'm going to do it, and that attracts an audience that is more in line with my sensibilities, and that's a lot easier to entertain. Because, for example, if you're a Broadway production doing a musical about Alexander Hamilton, for example, and you go to a country that has never heard about the founding fathers, like say India, yeah, they might find it interesting, but it's going to take a lot more other work to get them there.
Right.
You just show up, they'll have no idea. It's going to be boring. So I'd rather go the easier route and focus on the audience that already likes history, already likes architecture and travel, and kind of in my style of casual storytelling. Because, for example, a content creator like myself, I'm very authentic. I'm very run and gun, very spontaneous in the way I tell stories. So a lot of people who love history in the more academic way hate my stuff because it's
Right.
too to them it's too popcorn entertainment. And I realize I will never get that audience. Let me not even bother getting that audience. Let me just focus on the people who really love my stuff.
So
So to answer your question, I think the way to focus on getting the better audience is to lean into your strengths.
got it. And then, but focusing on the audience, as you just said, ignoring the ones that that are not going to get value out of this is also important, because we do see creators who are trying to do everything, to cover as much land as possible, and that backfires over time.
Right. So Aziz Ansari wrote an amazing book called Modern Romance a few years ago, and he had a chapter that was all about saying it's going to be a fact that 90% of the people you meet are going to hate you. Don't try to convert those 90%. Just focus on those 10% that will probably love you. And that's very true, because 10% out of 7 billion people is still a whole lot of people. It's, what is it, 700 million more? It's a whole lot of people.
Right.
Yeah, just focus on those 10%. And then I think that it's more about the act of ignoring the audience that you don't want, that is not going to be valuable, and focusing on the audience that you do want. So the thing is with online content creation, especially if it's public, you're going to get tens of thousands of comments. A lot of them are going to be completely irrelevant to you. So no matter how hateful, how disgusted, or how uncomfortable they might be, you're not really needing. You don't need to placate to those people. You have to
Right.
focus on the people who are already saying, "Oh, I find this fascinating. I would love to learn more about this." If they're commenting in a very constructive way, oh, that's a good audience member. And that way, Since TikTok is, for example, a platform very good at finding the audience best for you, the moment you start leaning into the way you like to tell stories, or the way you're very humorous, or the way you or maybe tell the best practical tips, it could be anywhere, or the way you best garden, just focus on that and you'll get that audience.
Interesting. And we're, we are discussing that all the time in some angles, but the one thing that I do want to ask you is, what would be the most practical tips you would give to creators to come up with a really good story? Because
Oh yeah.
especially when traveling, you have to be a little bit more spontaneous. Sometimes when you're making videos about, the city you're living in, that's one thing. But then when you're traveling, it's a little bit more adventurous. So what's your take on this?
I think the best way to tell a story while traveling is finding follow what fascinates you. So it won't always be logically what you think people might find fascinating, but trust that instinct. Trust your intuition. That might not sound practical, but trust me, it's the most practical thing you'll ever learn in life. Because if you follow that gut instinct, that will, trust me, that will be some of the best videos you make. Because, for example, I did a video about, oh, okay, I was in England, and I was staying in Manchester, which is a beautiful city, very interesting city, lots of cool history, lots of opportunity to do food videos. But for some reason, one of those days, I was like, I just want to go to this town called Sheffield. I had no idea what the hell Sheffield is. You probably never heard of Sheffield, have you,
I've never
Mickey?
heard of this. No.
There we go. Yeah, most people have not heard of it. But I was just fascinated. I could not tell you logically why I should go to Sheffield. I could not tell you logically if it would have been even worth my time to do good content in this random city in England. But I went, and I made these videos. They went all viral. I end up getting on the news because
Wow.
I talked about some type of sauce that they have, and I gained like 10,000 followers on TikTok like in one day from people from Sheffield. So I followed that instinct, and I found something fascinating that no one covered, because no one covers that city, at least in terms of travel. So follow your instinct. That's my top tip.
Cool. Yeah. So that's actually a very interesting story. Okay, so we almost have to wrap up. What would be? How would you like to finalize this? Is there any message you want to send to creators in the world?
Yeah, I think what you guys are doing at Wonder is really interesting,
Thank
adding
you.
that additional layer to videos. So I think content creators have to not only seek value from companies, because a lot of us are in the mode of, ooh, I want brand partnerships. I want companies to pay me more money. I want YouTube to give me more money, or TikTok to give me more money. We also have to work the other way. We also have to support those companies that are doing really interesting things, because who knows? Those are going to be the companies that either make something that's so ubiquitous that all around the world it just becomes that additional layer of the internet, or they just become a really, really cool company to be associated with.
Right.
So for content creators, that's the final thing. I would say work with those cool companies, even though they might not be the super big names that are paying you the gigantic bucks. But it's worth meeting the people behind them and working with them in interesting ways, because maybe that's the a great way a content creator will expand their horizons.
I highly appreciate this one, especially with your partnership with us. And thank you so much, Ariel.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for interviewing me, and happy to be part of the Wonder experience. And if you want to see more of my videos, go to TikTok, Ariel Viera, and on YouTube, I'm Urbanist Exploring Cities and Urbanist Live on Facebook.
And it doesn't matter if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or you're watching this on Instagram, LinkedIn, or any other channels. You'll have in the description a link to the Wonder and the Instagram and the TikTok profiles of Ariel. Have a good one.
Have a good day.